we celebrate this feast in honor of St. Elizabeth of Hungary, and as God would have it, of course, I served at St. Elizabeth of Hungary Parish in Pleasant Hills for 3 years. It's my last assignment before becoming a pastor. And it's a beautiful community, beautiful church. Yeah, they've recently renovated it, but I couldn't help but think, why was I there? Well, because the pastor there, who served for over 20 years, Father Roy Conley, was laid to rest. The funeral mass was at that church that he served so well. I couldn't help but think of St. Elizabeth of Hungary. The church has been renovated, as I mentioned, but while I was there in the sanctuary, at the very top of the sanctuary was a statue of St. Elizabeth of Hungary. You know anything about St. Elizabeth of Hungary? She was a queen. And the story goes that while she was a queen, a princess, she actually was raised with Ludwig, who would become her husband. Ludwig was kind of a harsh man, but she served him well, in a sense as a wife and a mother. But she served the people. She had a great love for the poor and the suffering. So she would sneak bread from the royal bakery. She would give it to the poor. And he had warned her husband Ludwig, don't do this. I don't want you to be feeding the crowds. You just keep the bread here for us. And so one day she was sneaking out of the castle, with in her apron loaves and loaves of bread. She had them all piled up, and she had it in her apron and her cloak, and she was heading out to the streets, the byways and highways, to give to the poor. And she was caught by her husband, at least he thought, red-handed. He says, "Open your cloak, open the apron." And so she did, and what fell out was not bread, but beautiful roses. In a time of the year, the roses wouldn't be there. So roses fell to the ground. And so the image of St. Elizabeth of Hungary, she has a crown on her head and roses in her arms. Because she continued, after her husband died, she became a third order Franciscan tertiary. And she continued to do what God called her to do, to be a loving servant to the poor and the suffering within her kingdom. Now, today we hear about another king and another kingdom. Now, some of you might say, I have a little problem with the end of the story. Because what does the king do? Those who didn't want him to be king, what's he do? He slays them in his sight, kills them. That doesn't sound like a loving and kind God, but what basically Jesus is saying in the parable is the fact that those who will not serve, first of all, the little bit that they do have, little faith they have, will be taken away from them. And those that are not faithful will die in their sin. Not so much that the king will slay them, but rather the king of this world will take their lives. And so today we thank God for the gift of faith that brings us here today, this morning. We hear about, how beautiful that we had a mother read that particular passage from 2 Maccabees, about the mother with her 7 sons, who had, and I kind of love this passage. I know it's not appropriate today. It's not politically correct. However, it says, with her motherly heart, she was given the courage of a man. Womanly heart, she was given the courage of a man. Well, men and women both can have that kind of courage. She shows that so very well. And faith, so much faith that she could witness to see all 7 of her sons' lives taken cruelly. And for the last one, she doesn't want him spared either. Rather, she tells him, offer yourself up to God, be faithful to him, and he will be faithful to you. And I will see you in the next life. Even in the Old Testament, this was her thought. And so we thank God for the gift of faith. And as I stand here remembering Roy Conley, who was a faithful servant to the Lord as a priest, and church was pretty full yesterday. People truly loved him as he served them so very well. I remember, too, that I want you to remember Eddie Skirtich. Who's Ed Skirtich? Ed Skirtich is the brother of my classmate, John Skirtich, the pastor right next door up there in the South Hills of St. Gabriel's in Whitehall. His brother was only 53 years old. And he suffered physically with many different ailments, but was always courageous in his faith. John and he, they always went to the pirate opener. That was something they did as brothers. John loved his brother so very much, as Ed loved his brother too. So I can't help but think, remember his mom. Also, her name's Loretta, so remember her. And his brothers and sister, as they mourn the loss of their brother. Tomorrow, who would know, but I'll be going right back to South Hills to celebrate with my brother, Priest John, at the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass for his brother, at his funeral. But you know what? None of us know the time or the hour, do we? But you know what? Loretta, John's mom, like the woman in 2nd Maccabees today, always taught her children well. Love the Lord with your whole being, and serve him well in this life, that you may one day share in the glory of heaven with all the angels and saints. And so like those 7 brothers, like Eddie Skirtich, let's pray that we too may one day share in the glory of heaven by the mercy of God, who will be that King, who gives us those talents, the faith that we need to witness to him in our daily life.